Please welcome Professor Dr. Ainol. Let us put our hands together to welcome Professor Dr. Ainol. Professor Dr. Ainol will carry out this workshop session entitled Assessing Reading, Designing Appropriate Tasks Across CFR level. Again, assessing reading, designing appropriate tasks across CFR level. Okay, this is a workshop. So upon Ainol, I think we'll be walking around to guide us. And Dr. Ainol, Professor Dr. Ainol, the floor is all yours. Thank you. The session will be for 50 minutes.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning. Okay, this is meant to be a workshop, so I should not be up there, right? but actually, to tell you the truth, I know that the venue is going to be like this, so the way I've designed this is not so much of a workshop that we have a lot of hands-on, because of feasibility reason and also time constraint. But what I want to take you through is going through some of the considerations in assessing reading within the curriculum of the CFR aligned English language teaching in our schools, right? And what is important, because reading, I think we have seen changes in the different skills. Earlier when we talk about the other skills like speaking and listening that used to be neglected. Now you have the speaking component in the curriculum, so you have speaking activities. And then you see new things in speaking and as well as new things in listening. But reading has always been there, right? Reading and writing have always been there. And like I said earlier in the forum, it used to be there because from the very early inception of the curriculum, we plan it such that to learn English in school is to make them to be able to read and write when they go to university. So therefore, the curriculum in the secondary and primary should prepare them for that. But now we realize it's not that, because national standard, international standards, when you learn a language, is to function in the society, right? To function in the society, to be able to communicate in English language, is that you don't just read and write. You've got to be able to speak the language and speak successfully. And the definition of successful communication in the 21st century is very different from when we were in school, because now communication is mostly virtual as much as it is traditional, right? So those are the new things that teachers have to be aware of in terms of language skills. But reading, like I said, has always been there, right? We have always taught, we were taught reading, we were tested on our reading comprehension. And so most of the things that we went through in school, as far as reading is concerned, is almost the same as what you now teach, and the way you teach and the way you run your activities for reading, right? However, in assessing reading, right, because of the framework of CFR that says that learning a language is to be able to function in the language. So reading is now seen, or should be seen, in a different light, right? In a more realistic situation in reading. So when we talk about reading, so you have to read aloud, it has a different purpose. But now I'm just going to focus on that comprehension thing. It's been there for 40-something years, teaching reading comprehension and assessing reading comprehension. But now in the CFR curriculum, the way we plan for assessing reading has to be a bit different because of the paradigm shift in looking at reading as a communicative activity rather than just a reading activity. Okay? All right, so because of that, so I'm just going to, I did already, do the overview of the CFR aligned curriculum. So in the CFR, it aligns to what we aspire to prepare our students for to be proficient in the English language. So proficiency. So when we talk about proficiency, so this is taken from the Malaysian Education Blueprint. Yeah? So when we talk about proficiency here, so the definition of proficiency now should be aligned to the definition of proficiency in the CFR. That is, students are social agents. They are learning English language because they will function in the society. So as far as reading is concerned, so we have to look at, okay, in the real life, in the real world, what do we read? What are the things that we read? So it's the things that we read in the real world that should be brought in the teaching and learning. Okay? So that's one of the things. So yeah, so it says here, the social agents who accomplish tasks. As far as reading, writing, listening, and speaking are concerned, we read and write and speak and listen in activities outside, in a society. So therefore, for example, you see that teaching, speaking, for example, during our time, if there was any component of speaking, we were always asked to speak in front of the class. Speak in front of class, speak in front of class. But that's not how, in a social function, we do. Because outside the classroom, how do we speak English? When do we speak English? Not sitting in front of people, but sitting with people, and everybody has a turn to speak. Right? Because we discuss. There is turn taking. There is adab in turn taking. Right? And there is a way not to get somebody to monitor, capitalize the conversation or the discussion. So those are all, when we talk about that, there's now the humanizing education and the way we mold or we design our learning, teaching and learning activities. So going back to reading, so it is the same. So what we bring into the classroom for the purpose of reading comprehension activity should replicate the real world reading. Right? So what's real world reading? Okay, let's think about primary school children, 7, 8, 9 years old. What are the things that they have to read? So that you will teach them reading by using those kind of activities. So in the real world, what do primary school students read? Comics. So for some, those are very personal. So personal activities, reading books, reading comics. But what is beyond personal that children read? When they go out, signboards. They also have to read signboards. Right? So therefore, you have to teach them how to read signboards. Because that's in a social setting. Okay? Personal setting is choose the book that they want to read, choose the comic that they want to read. Right? So what else? Menu. They have to be able to order the drinks. I give you only 20 ringgit. That's for your lunch. So make an order. So they have to be able to read the menu with the context of having just 20 ringgit. And the menu is in English. Okay? So that is what reading comprehension is in the classroom. Because it has to replicate the real world reading activities outside the classroom. So it's no longer what we did last time. Remember when we opened our reading book, reading our English book last time? Passages after passages after passages after passages of reading comprehension, right? So if you look at Pulse, and if you look at, what are other textbooks you use? Close Up. So when you read, you have that reading section. So what are some of the things that you see rather than passages? As far as reading, yeah? Sorry? Reviews, yes, movie reviews, train schedule, bus schedule, catalogs. Yeah? Those are reading activities. Okay? So that's the number one thing that differentiate the teaching of learning of reading now in the CF curriculum as compared to before. That is because they are using the English language for a purpose in real life activities. So those real life activities must be brought into the teaching and learning. And when you talk about reading, so the materials, the things that they read outside the classroom in real life must be brought as the teaching and learning, in the teaching and learning. And therefore also in the assessment. All right? So, and this is important to differentiate. Because as far as assessment is concerned, the purpose of assessing reading is for us to understand, to put where the students should be. Where should the students be? Okay? So if you're teaching primary school, so they should be in the basic user level. So activities that you do in teaching reading should replicate the basic user activities. Assessment is to find out whether they can do what basic users can do as far as reading comprehension is concerned. So that's where it is important to target your reading tasks, yeah, that replicate a basic user, what basic users can do. So similarly, if you are teaching secondary, your teaching and learning materials, teaching and learning tasks, teaching and learning activities should replicate what independent users can do and should do at the level of independent user. And we at university, we also have reading comprehension component in some of our English courses. So they should replicate what the activities that we do in the classroom, should replicate what proficient users do as proficient readers. And similarly, is what also we assess. All right? And then, how do we differentiate? Oh, sorry. Sorry. Can we have back the... Can we have the... Oh, slideshow. All right, okay. This one. Okay, all right, thank you. So what differentiates, this is very important, what differentiates the A's from the B's as far as reading is concerned? So that is what we have to first understand before we design year 5, tahun 5, reading test from the Form 2 reading test. It looks like the TP, yeah, because it's about the tahap penguasaan. It's a competency. What is it that they can do at that level? Okay, so I want to highlight you. Let's look at the difference between an A2 and a B2. Okay, this is global, yeah, global. Okay, so let's look at, okay, I want you to highlight to me, what are some of the keywords that differentiates A2 from a B1? Because A2 is your tahap 2 primary, right? And then B1 is your lower secondary. So what are some of the keywords that differentiate what A2 can do and what B1 can do? Okay. A2. So A2 can describe simple term aspects of his or her background. That is the content area that they can talk about. When you talk about his or her background, that's the content, right? So in terms of content, A2 can only describe simple aspect of content. However, B1, so let's go for content. What can B1 do as far as content is concerned? Where? What differentiates the B1 from an A2 as far as content is concerned? Because we have one, Cikgu, nama apa Cikgu? Cikgu Siti said, as far as content of an A1, can only describe simple aspect of content. For example, the background, immediate environment, matters of their interest, of immediate needs, personal. But a B1, in terms of content, is more now describe experience and events, dreams and hope, and give reasons or explanations of opinion and plans. So it's beyond personal. It is, yeah? Yeah. The content is a little bit more expanded. Right? So, the same thing. So, the choice of, later, when we look at the content of the reading text that you choose, should qualify those content, the content of the text. Okay? All right. Now, so that's an overview of how we should understand the curriculum. Now, let's look at assessing reading. Let's now zoom to reading. Okay? So, what's reading? Okay? So, one of the components of reading in the curriculum is comprehension. Right? So, what makes up reading comprehension? So, if you look at an assessment of reading comprehension, so you see two components, the one on the left and the one on the right. So, what is on the left? What's on your right? Huh? Oh, I didn't do anything. Oh. What's on the left and what's on the right? On the left, you call a stimulus. On the right, you call the task requirement, the question, the item. Okay? So you're right to say, for any assessment of reading, you have to, a priori, before it happens, before you want to conduct that assessment, you have to plan for these two things. Number one is the input, which is called a text input. Okay? And two, then you have the items just now on the right. So, in other words, you cannot just say that, okay, I want to run a reading comprehension, and then you just plan whatever. There are two things you must think about. First is the input, on the left just now, and then the test items. Now, I won't have time to go through the test items in detail because it will involve another workshop. But in an a priori, which is neglected in the old curriculum, we seldom think about at the initial stage or at the planning stage of reading comprehension, we seldom think of a text input. So I want to focus a little bit more on the text input and how important to differentiate your text input for the different levels of the CFR. Yeah? So what text input is for A2 and what text input is for B1 and what can be text input as when you go to higher secondary. Okay? And then we will talk a little bit on the test items as we move along. Okay? So what makes up a reading text? What differentiates the text? And then what are the text across the different levels? So, okay. So when you talk about text input, so first thing that when you plan for reading comprehension assessment or assessing reading comprehension is that you have to take time, you have to invest your time in the text selection. Select your text appropriately to replicate the text that your students at their level should be reading, number one. Number two, the level that you have chosen, whatever text that you have chosen, is appropriate for that level of students. For example, if you are teaching year 5, yeah? So year 5 is A2, okay? So what are text selection, what are texts that can be used for an A2 because this is a year 5? And then what are the, if you have found one, okay lah, I want to take a menu. Boleh kah this menu be for standard 5? But I thought I find menu in a form 5 test paper. So cannot lah. There are criteria that makes that menu a form, a standard 5 reading comprehension text input as compared to another menu that can be in a reading test paper, but it is meant for the B1 or low B2 reading comprehension. Okay? So these are the things that I will take you through. These are the things that in the old days, we don't really give attention. We just pick and choose whatever text that we think is suitable. Okay? Then only, after you have done the text selection carefully, vetted them, and then understand that there are possibilities to ask questions based on those, then only you go for your items. Then those items, we are all familiar, we've done this for as many years as you have been teaching. We will test the necessary reading skills or the cognitive processing that you want to test. That one should not be a problem. But let's now look at text selection. Let's focus on text selection. What is this? Can I use this to be in my exam paper? These are all exemplars that I've used, are all from the CE, from the Cambridge English website, with permission. Okay, what is this? It's a poster, okay? So, can this be a text input for a test? And what do you think is the level? By just eyeballing the, what do you call this just now? A poster. What do you think? So this is a poster. Can I use it for B2? Or can I use it, or should I use it in B1 only? Or can it go as low to an A2? Can I use this for tahun 5, tahun 6? So that's where, just now I said, so that's the old way of thinking, that we will always look at the question. But actually, the text input plays a role to what level of reading the student needs to have in order to answer the question. So, there are some characteristics of this text input that make it suitable for the level that you want it to be. So, this is actually, can go to an A1. Can be an A1 text input. Can be a text input for an A1 reading comprehension. Why? Later we will see. There are a list of characteristics that make this an A1 text input. Yeah? You're not wrong to say that, these items make it a B1. Yes. But in the theoretical framework of reading, according to the CFR, reading is a cognitive process. We don't go to the question first. We process the information in the text first. The more demanding the text is, that means you have to have a higher level of ability. Right? So, what makes the text more demanding? There are some characteristics. One of it is, why do you think this, when you look at it, most of you, when I asked you what level, most of you didn't say it is appropriate for A. Many of you say it's B, the B1 or B2. But it's actually possible for A1. But what do you think are some of the characteristics that make this text input? Vocabulary is one. Yes, vocabulary range is 1. Okay? So what do you mean by the vocabulary? Yes. Mostly highly frequently used words. Right? Okay. Do you see any idiomatic expressions? So A1, no idiomatic expression of the high frequency or low frequency. Once you have one, then it will disqualify for an A text input, A level. Yeah, high frequency idiomatic expression can happen at high A2 text. Say for example, standard 3 and standard 4, you can have 1 or 2 or some idiomatic expression, but the high frequency one. Once you have the low frequency, it is not suitable for A2 anymore. It has to go beyond that. It's probably B1 and above. Got it? But we take this from the brochure. So how can we lower it down? So I say this brochure has some idiomatic expression. I want to do a standard 6, standard 4 test paper. So change the vocabulary. So that's where adaptation takes place. I still want to use it. But your external assessor kata cannot, because it's got the idiomatic expression. Okay, you can, you just change. Okay, take out or erase or remove or change the words. There's idiomatic expressions. Okay? All right? So next, what is this? What text input is this? It's a menu from Tony's Kitchen. All right? Can I use it? Why should I use a menu for in an English in a reading test paper? Because that's what they read in the real world. Okay? And what do you think this is suitable for? Which level do you think this is suitable for? So look at the vocabulary range just now. No idiomatic expression, A1. Can be used for A1. Yeah. Right? So then you will see the items will further target the items, the cognitive processing and the skills into A1. Okay? Because the sentence structure, there's not even structured sentences. There's just information. This is good for, what skills is this good for? What are the skills in reading comprehension this is good for? Quick reading, right? Skimming and scanning. Right? Quick reading. And quick reading is the most oftenly used reading activity in the real world. For little children, they want to check which toy to buy. Right? Or how much is what? Right? Items like this. Okay. But this is, of course, what we normally see in the traditional, during our time, reading comprehension test, right? And this time, let me give you half a minute. What do you think this is target? Where do you think this is target for? What can I use? At which level can I use this text? B1? B2? Can I use, do you think I can use this for primary? Primary, no, yeah? Why? What are some of the aspects of this text? Yes, another characteristics that differentiate text input from the lower level to the higher level is length, reading length, the number of words. And I think in the guide, your guidebook it does say, it gives the length of the text that students should be reading at lower primary with the upper primary. Okay? Okay? So this is a B1 text. All right? Now, let's go for three things just now. So how different is it from the earlier ones, which are A1? One is the length. So more words, number of words. So longer reading. 2, vocabulary. So what differentiates this text from the earlier text that make it suitable for a B1? Yeah? The vocabulary. So what are some of the vocabulary that make it a B1 vocabulary? Yeah, some of the words, paragraph, generation, paragraph 1, different generations, ironically, yeah. Early adopters of the smartphone. So these early adopters of a smartphone is not literal meaning. Yeah? So remember just now I said, once you have vocabulary that are not literal, then it cannot be A. It has to be higher than A. All right? Okay? What about the structure? Structure, sentences. Yeah? Yeah, complex sentence. Exactly. The A, if you have any complex sentence, is very limited. 1 or 2 sentences for A2. But once you have more than that of complex sentence in a text, is not suitable for A. Right? Okay? So clear? 10 minutes. All right. So what can you conclude up to this point about coming up with a reading comprehension test? What are some of the conclusions?
Be careful in choosing text input.
What are some of the precautions?
Precaution is the vocabulary and the reading length.
Yeah. Be careful before we even start coming up with the items. Text selection should be done first. And there are many considerations to make the text suitable for the level that you want. So for example, just now the vocabulary, the more sophisticated words there are in the text, then it is meant for the higher level. The more less simple sentences there are in the text, the higher the level of the, yeah. Exactly. Yep. Yes. Exactly. Just like we said just now, if you want to keep the text, because it is what children will probably deal with outside, so you have to do adaptation. So for example, the text just now has some idiomatic expressions. So remove that. Change it into simple, direct, literal words rather than, yes. Yeah? Okay, good. Thank you. So adaptation is a process that you may have to go through in order to make the text input suitable for the level that you intend it to be. Anything else? All right. So these are other possible text input that can be used in the exam in the test, reading comprehension test, ranging from, what do you see? What is A, what is B, what is C? Schedule. A is a schedule. B is a brochure. C is also a brochure. Okay? So how do you differentiate A from B? So if you look at B, what do you think? Yeah? More complete sentences in B. But what are some of the glaring things that you see between the three? Okay, other than colors and pictures, but the text, yeah? So if you look at B, they are made up of short texts. And the short texts are connected or not connected? Not related to one another. Right? So then you can test whatever reading skills that you can, but using multiple short texts. Okay? And multiple short texts can be used for A2. Yeah. Faces and then description. Match the people to the characteristics. Match the people to their hobbies. Right? So those are called multiple short texts. Multiple short texts, A can do, A2 can do. But if you have multiple long texts, then it has to be higher than A2. Say, for example, description of islands, the different islands, right? Short paragraphs. Paragraphs are long text, right? And then name of the places. So matching of description of places, one paragraph, so cannot be for A2. And then this one C, is that short text? They're not even short text, but there are points that they have to read, right? And they are different information. So it's similar to B, but while B is short paragraphs, but C are points in point forms, right? And then you have this one. So this is the usual one that we grew up with. Every time we do a reading class, it's always read text like this, all right? So this one, so I don't have to say much about it, but you know from the glimpse from a very quick eyeballing, you can already tell that this is meant for higher than lower secondary. Cannot be any lower than lower secondary. Yeah. All right. So when we see the different types of text that can be used in your reading papers, these are defined in the CFR as categories of reading. Yeah? And what are the categories of reading? There are 5 categories of reading according to the CFR. There are some texts that are meant for orientation, some reading for argument and information, some reading for leisure, some reading instruction, some reading correspondence. Okay? It's not very important to know in detail what they are, but enough to say that in one reading test, you can have a variety of the reading input, text input, that come from the different natural tasks. For example, you have menu, and then there's now description of an island. So menu. What is a menu? Menu is reading for orientation. That is very quick, want to look for information. And then description of islands, 3 islands. So that one is reading for leisure, right? So this is just to tell you that you can vary the types of text according to the different natural tasks of reading in the real world. Okay? But, however, there are some pointers in the companion that differentiates the types of reading across the different levels. This is taken from Khalifa and Weir, summarized. Yeah? So, for example, let's see. I've not gone down all the way to A1, but let's see the difference between a B1 from an A2. Types of text at the different levels between a B1 and A2. So what can you say? So if you want to use text for a B1, that you cannot use for an A2. Once you have a text that is intended to convince or persuade, yeah. Say for example, the long text just now about, let's take a topic, whether I have it or not, topic on whether, mapping the world. So what is this? What's the topic on? The question was, what makes this, when you say that this is not meant for A2, what makes this not suitable for an A2? The content, yeah, the body of knowledge that the readers need to the process, yeah. So that's what is meant by here. For B1 and B2, if you have persuasive writing text, it's not meant for the A's. Because A's, either A1 or A2, is all to inform, to tell, to tell. Yeah? Informative types of text. Okay, and then you say this, we said just now that another characteristics is the grammatical or lexical resource. That is if the text has words, yeah, vocabulary range that are less frequently used, more, then it is meant for the higher level. So that's where when you do your text selection, you have to do adaptation, like you said just now. So if you find some that are not suitable, you just tone it down, change the words. Okay. Idiomatic expressions can only be visible in the test paper when they are B1 and above. But if there is, you want to use for A2, you change lah. Yeah? All right. See. So see here. What differentiates an A1? Sorry. I want to focus on the primary and secondary. What differentiates the A2 from the B1? See, A2 can understand short, simple text on familiar matters. Okay, so content, body of content, content of the text are only familiar at A2. Concrete type, so information must be concrete. Okay. But once you go to B1, factual text on subjects related to his or her field of work or interest with a satisfactory level of comprehension. So but still straightforward. Okay. But once they go to A2, this is higher, the upper secondary. Okay. Reading to different texts and purpose and using appropriate reference sources selectively has a broad active vocabulary range. So in other words, you can choose text that has less frequently used words, but may experience some difficulty with low frequency idioms. So in other words, it's only at B2 that you can have idiomatic expressions. Even then, it's just the low frequency. You can have the low frequency idioms only at B2. If you want to have idiomatic expressions, at B1 it has to be the high frequency idiomatic expressions. Okay? How much time do I have? You cannot see. 10 minutes? Oh, a lot of time. Okay. All right. So that's some of the pointers in coming up with or in starting your reading comprehension test. And yeah. Okay. The third one, nature of information. Just now you also identified from the different texts. There are some aspect of the nature of the information in the text that make it suitable for the higher level rather than in the low level. Yeah. Nature of information here refers to whether the information is concrete or abstract. The more abstract the information is, the more suitable it is for the higher level. The less abstract, the more concrete they are, it's more suitable for the lower level. Let's take an example. What is an abstract topic? What's an abstract topic as compared to the concrete topic? You choose a text, but it is concrete. Let's go back to this. Concrete or abstract? If we have a continuum, on the left is concrete and on the right it goes more abstract, where in the continuum is the content of this passage. It's more toward abstract. What are our cues to say that it's abstract? Exactly. Yeah? So this is what should happen. This is how it should be in your vetting of your text. When you vet your test paper, before you vet your reading test, you have to vet your text input first. And these are the things we have to be talking about. Whether it's suitable or not, look at the content. It is abstract or not, oh, I think there are some aspect of abstractness in this text. And therefore, we can't use it for Form 1, for example. But I want to still use it for Form 1. Then let's change some of the information here, or let's take out some of the information here to make it a little bit more concrete. Or, rather, let's move this to be a Form 3 test paper or Form 4 test paper and get a new one for the Form 1. Okay? All right. So the third characteristics to differentiate the text input, concreteness or abstractness of the content. Next is the body of knowledge, familiar to specialized. So if you see the descriptor just now, so you see that the A's normally will only be dealing with very familiar topics, whether it's speaking also only about themselves. But once they move to higher, tahap 2, a little bit about friends and family and neighbors. Yeah? But as they go to secondary, it's more specialized. Right? And as they go to university, of course, it will be of areas of interest and different interests. So content knowledge is another consideration you have to look at when you select your text input. Readability. What is readability? Has anyone heard of readability? So readability is about easiness of understanding a written text, how easy it is. And what readability can be calculated. So we have the text inspector, Duolingo, and a few other. You can get it online. Yeah? You can try text inspector. Text inspector gives a free 250 words. You can copy and paste if you want to Google text inspector now. They give a free website in which you can put your text in there up to 250 words, and they will tell you what level the text is. What is the level of the text? And we do that at university. At university, we do that for our proficiency English test, our placement test, MPM, Majlis Peperiksaan, also does that from where? Put the text into the text inspector. The text inspector will calculate the readability, the ease of reading. And the ease of reading is a calculation that takes into consideration what we said just now, the vocabulary range, the structure of the sentence, and then the number of syllables in each words. It's a mathematical thing, but they will give you the values, and then you will make your decision whether this is suitable or not for a Form 3 test, or whether it is not. Okay? So you can Google and try to find out. It gives you free 250 words for you to analyze your text. Okay? So readability, I said just now, there are tools to check for you. We use, at higher education, we use the text inspector. At MPM, I think they also use text inspector. And last but not least, after you have settled, of course, after you have settled your text, then you sit down to talk about your task, your reading task, which is item questions. How many questions you want to have for this text? How many questions you want to have for this text? And with the questions, of course, what are the skills? Right? So the skills, I think, I don't have to worry about this because you've been doing this for many, many years. These are the main skills that you want to test. It's the same. Standard 6 pun the same skill as Form 3. Right? Skimming, scanning. But it's the text input that makes a difference. It's the vocabulary that they have to deal with that makes a difference in terms of the comprehension. Okay? And of course, the choice of the method, what do you call this? Test method. Some say test method, some say task, right? So whether you choose MCQ or gap filling or matching, blah, blah, blah. Bearing in mind that there are some test methods that makes the task more difficult. Which of these is the easiest? Yes, MCQ. Why is it the easiest? What makes it the easiest? Yeah, chances of getting the answer correct because the answer is staring at them. Yeah, exactly. The easy to score is MCQ, but the most difficult to come up with is the MCQ as well, because you have to come up with 4 options or 3 options, right? So in choosing your test method, you have to be aware that there are some test methods that makes the same thing that you want to test easier or more difficult, all right? And we all know the MCQ is subject to guessing. If you have 4 options, 25% of getting the answer correct by closing their eyes. Oh, okay, I want to choose B. There's a 25% chance of getting the answer correct. Okay? But nonetheless, it doesn't mean that MCQ is not a good method. Yeah? You just have to be aware of. And there is also a variety. You also have to be aware that there are a variety of test methods within MCQ, matching, gap filling, because within MCQ, for example, within matching, there is different types of matching heading to paragraphs, okay? Matching heading to paragraphs as compared to matching the normal matching heading to paragraph is a little bit more difficult because matching heading to paragraphs is about global reading. Right? Global reading is more difficult because you have to not just understand specific detail, but the general information of the text. Okay? So, so with that, if we go through the processes of coming up with your reading test systematically, starting from the text input to the skill that you want to test, we should be able to differentiate the students at the different level. Okay? So according to your purpose, inshallah. So with that, I thank you.
Yeah? Dr. B. Okay. Thank you, esteemed Professor Dr. Ainol, for that enlightening workshop. Now it's time to open the floor to questions. Okay, we have reserved the next 5 minutes for your queries and discussions. Please raise your hand if you have a question. When asking a question, kindly state your name and affiliation before proceeding with your query. Okay, any questions? Yeah. You may use the microphone. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah. So I guess Professor Dr. Ainol have really cleared all the doubts, and it's a very crystal clear workshop. So thank you again. Next, we'd like to call upon Dr. T. Wanita to present the certificate to Professor Dr. Welcome. Not on the stage, yeah. Yeah, stage.